There's no other way around it. If you want to get better at Deadlock, you need to get better at laning. Every game will have this phase, and if you're solo queuing, the majority of the time you're going to be in solo lane too. So in this video, I want to go over the 4 levels, I suppose, of solo laning, starting from people that are very beginner, new to certain characters in the laning phase, going on to some of the more pro play, if you want to call it that, in a coordinated setting and what they do that we can all learn from. The 4 levels are going to be broken down into beginner, intermediate, advanced, and pro. So naturally, we'll start with the beginner phase, and we'll start with ex-warrior Pavlos, somebody that I cast Valorant with and has about 20 hours in the game at the time of this recording. So he's still learning the ropes. He's not new to MOBAs, which is something that we'll come back to that's really important, but this is his literal first game of Dynamo. So be nice, don't be rude. We all started at this point, but also there should be a lobby where everybody's relatively new to the game at this point. You have a rough idea on what some of the characters can do. You have a rough idea on how the MOBA side of it works. And the main point to begin with when it comes to scaling well across all of the 4 stages is going to be knowing your character and knowing the matchup. 1, whether they're a good solo laner or whether they would prefer to be duo laning. And 2, whether there's just certain matchups as your opponent and what they're running, whether you suit them better, that you can up the ante, put the pressure on and win your lane, versus matchups like this one for Dynamo when you're up against a Shiv. Dynamo as a solo laner isn't great. In fact, in a duo lane, I'd say that Dynamo suffers early on because it takes a while for him to get going, and a lot of his kit is based around like team play, right? So sticking him on an island on one side of the map is not going to be great for him. Whereas his opponent is a Shiv who is currently AFK, is fantastic at solo laning. The sustain that you had with Bloodletting, the pressure that you can keep building up with serrated knives, slice and dice and your ultimate to basically confirm kills and be a massive harasser, be just an absolute pain in the ass to deal with. It's going to be difficult over for the Dynamo to go with. But this is what I wanted to come back to with the MOBA experience. So knowing your matchup and stuff is important. Knowing your win conditions of the lane is also integral. But also the creep management side of it is important too. This has been a bit of a free farm for Pavlos at this point. The Shiv is now back and starting to put pressure in. But because of that MOBA experience that Pavlos has from League of Legends, he knows about basically freezing the lane. He's not just unloading a mag, which Dynamo doesn't really have much of in this game, into the creeps in order to confirm the kills. He's doing it in some instances, but mostly he's just tapping away, making sure that he gets the last hit on the creep in order to get the souls, and even hard meleeing when he can get the opportunity to stop the Shiv from denying him. Because Shiv is a shotgun character, it means that his bullets naturally travel a lot faster, and if he's closer to your sort of creeps that you kill than you are, he's going to get pretty easy denies overall. But the way that Pavlos is managing this creep is actually pretty good. As a beginner player, he sort of has the game in a great position for him to keep farming. He's equal with the Shiv, despite the Shiv having a lot of this control in the actual lane itself. This is a perfect position for the Dynamo to be in. It's just nice and chill, clearing up some of the creeps as and when you can, confirming them with a heavy melee. And it means that Shiv, who just wants to be harassing, wants to snowball and find kills whenever he can, he's under this kind of pressure. As soon as he tries to take a fight here, the Guardian's on his ass, the Kinetic Pulse is going to ward him away, and any just chip damage that the serrated knives can do is going to be healed up by the Dynamo. So the positioning is pretty solid for a beginner. Knowing the matchup is still going to take time. Like I said, literally his first game on Dynamo, so Pavlos is still going to be working out what this character can do. And you see it with a Kinetic Pulse, I think, like in a second. That, yeah, he's still learning the range of his abilities, right? So right now, he's still controlling the lane really well. And up against the Shiv, who's a fantastic solo laner that just wants to snowball, not only is the Dynamo keeping the head above water, but they're actually up in souls. This comes under the 4th point now, which if you've looked at the money for both the Shiv and the Dynamo, they have 1,500 souls and there's no items being bought. For the Shiv, it's a little less egregious, right? Because he's playing so far up and aggressively that he's not able to get back to his shop without maybe missing a couple of these waves. But the pressure that he's putting on the Dynamo isn't really enough to justify him being here all the time. Like I said, like the Dynamo is fairly comfortable. The more egregious side is the Dynamo because he is literally one roll away from his shop. He can get some items, and whilst the soul lead is the same, you'll hear a lot of MOBA players talk about like having the experience isn't a lead, items are the lead. So being able to get that stuff on board early, especially when the map suits you fairly well, That could be the difference between him not winning that fight versus him actually catching the Shiv and turning this lane around. It's only up until the 4-minute mark that the first items get bought on both sides, so both teams can definitely fix this a little bit more. And then naturally, this is just going to be the thing that beginners will have to deal with, is just knowing what to do in certain situations. The Shiv dies onto the Dynamo. Pavlos gets the item, sees that he's ahead and wants to try and put the pressure on, but Shiv, now the ball is in his court. He's in a great position to fight. The Dynamo needs to be a bit careful. He's also bought a heal and has healing Aurora ready to go. Uses Niva at 300 HP, getting up towards a Shiv that is getting a lot of stuff on board, even buys Bullet Lifesteal. This was just Pavlos sort of asking for it almost. But that just takes reps. That takes time. There's nothing in the YouTube video that can teach you how to do this. You've just got to play the game and just get the experience of dealing with these sort of situations. But it sort of does highlight for a beginner that if you have a MOBA background, you sort of know where you want to be taking these fights. Where your position, it really just comes down to the workflow of knowing your matchup. Are you on the back foot? Okay, so can you play passively in your lane and just play around your Guardian? If so, freeze the creeps in that direction, make sure you get the last hits, and now because the Shiv has got that kill, he can farm up all of these lanes, he can put up a lot of pressure, and now he's starting to develop a lead that it's going to be really difficult for Dynamo to come back from. The other small nitpick that you can go over to is that whilst this lane has been pushed back towards the Dynamo on this side, there is a tier 1 camp right here that he could potentially farm when he gets a minute. And this could be something that if the Shiv, if he got the kill and wanted to put the pressure on the Dynamo in that last fight, he could go on and instead doing damage to the Guardian, go and take the tier 1 camp away from the Dynamo, build that lead up just a little bit more. So now the Dynamo is on the back foot. It's always going to be tricky to sort of pull it uphill here. But you see how the beginning of the fight goes relatively well. It's just as the game goes on and you are getting experience in all of these different ways that a game can go, the things start to fall apart a little bit for Pavlos. But now we move on to the intermediate stage, and it's actually me. It's my gameplay from playing Kelvin. The view models are kind of broken because this was from a patch a couple of days ago. And yeah, this is me with about 500 hours in the game, just sort of picking up and learning Kelvin a little bit more. And I get put in a solo lane, which I know my matchup's a bit better now with the experience I have in the game. I know that Kelvin isn't a great solo laner, but he could do it if he needs to. He can be really annoying to deal with naturally with like his Arctic Beam, but the matchup suits the opponent because they're a Yamato, and Yamato on this patch is crazy strong, especially in solo laning, if they can just harass. You're about to see some of the burst damage that they're able to do. I know how much of a threat this can be, so I've tried to change my build, the way that I'm playing and positioning. Just because I know the matchup doesn't suit me very well here, I'm going to try and manage the creeps in a way similar to Pavlos, keeping them on my side towards the Guardian, in a place where I can farm them safely near my shop, but I'm also not losing the opponent's creeps to my creeps or the Guardian because they're too close. So here I'm just playing for distance. The Yamato's farming on the right side, so I go left to try and clear up some of these lanes. Just keeping in safe positions where the Yamato can't really harass me. Even going this way to get out, just to make sure that I don't get caught by this combination, because it quite literally could kill me this early on. The other side of it too is because I know my matchup, I'm adjusting my itemization whilst I'm playing, and I'm also adjusting my build order. I think at this point I was going for more of an Arctic Beam build, but because I know that Yamato's just going to keep harassing me and burning me down, I don't really want to buy a heal if I can help it. But what I want to do is upgrade my Frost Grenade to make that a heal, and put myself at a spot where I can just keep sustaining myself in these fights. If the Yamato gets close, much like we saw with Pavlos with the Kinetic Pulse, I can use my Arctic Beam in order to keep them back. They're not going to want to harass me at this point. One of the differences between me and Pavlos is as soon as I can buy an item, I do. The shop is right around the corner for me. The Yamato has to push up. They haven't bought anything just yet. It means that they can farm somewhat uncontested, but I'm back in a spot where I've just thrown a Frost Grenade just so I let them know that I know that they're there. And then if the Yamato keeps trying to pressure me here, sure, she does a lot of damage with a Power Slash, but the Guardian chunks her down and she has to back away at least slightly. Once I can buy another item, I get extra regen. Again, not part of the build that I was going for, but something that I felt that I needed to just keep myself in the fight and not put me in a position where I either die or need to go back and heal, in which case the Yamato can farm for free. Because I'm playing in this way, that I'm managing the creeps, I'm positioning well, and I know my matchup and my win conditions, I'm playing safe and I'm even equal on souls. Because we have this camp here too, I'm thinking because the lane is pushed up a little bit more, I don't want to play in super duper close. So I'm just going to farm these creeps up before the Yamato gets an opportunity. Or as we're about to see later in this clip, where Mo and Krill come along and take the camp right under my nose. So we can speed this up a little bit more. I'd say the only problem with this lane for me is I'm not playing to win, I'm playing to not lose, which in some instances, yeah, you kind of have to do. But because the rest of my team is losing their lanes, and we've already, I think, lost a Guardian at this point, and maybe it's a bit later when the haze disconnects. But right now, things are pretty precarious, and we're not going to win the game if I don't take a few risks and start to put the Yamato under some pressure. Like, I have the healing right. I've gone, like, again, supportive for sustain to keep myself in the fight, but it's not going to help me win it against the Yamato. I think at this point, I'm trying to just put some pressure in, use my Ice Path, try to force the Yamato back, but they're just not having any of it. They're still harassing me. They're keeping me on the back foot. I'm doing my best to sort of stay farmed up and stay ahead, but there's no real clear opportunity for me to take a lead, to take a fight, and to win it and go on forward. So time's still ticking on. We're at the 8-minute mark and things are basically even between us. So I'm doing well to keep my head above water, but the lane next to me has actually lost their Guardian. And this is the fifth element that we didn't really get to see and talk about much from the beginner stage, but it's going to become much more apparent when we look at the advanced and professional stages of solo laning. So here, because they've lost a Guardian, the Mo and Krill is able to actually come across, and they have that freedom to now gank me. They take my camp, for one, because they know that I'm not really in a position to pressure this, and I just have to deal with the fact that I'm being put in a 1 versus 2. A 1 versus 1 for Kelvin isn't great, never mind anything else. The haze comes across to try and help. I don't know what's going on with the animation, but they just get absolutely destroyed. They don't respect the amount of burst that Yamato can do, and they're 1.5k behind him, so they have to go back and heal, and so I'm left on my own yet again. Just trying to stay alive, farm up as much as I can. If I lose the Guardian, I'm at least in a position with my Ice Path that I can just run away whenever I can. But the macro side is definitely where I make a mistake here. I do well to keep control of the Guardian and the lane. I shove stuff back. But not only do I disrespect the fact that the Mo and Krill stay here, if I like 2x speed this, I start to push the lane up. The Mo and Krill is still here. And the Dynamo has shoved this lane so much that he's actually going to come across, Majestic Leap, and take a fight on me in a second. So here, I'm just way too extended. I try to go back. The Mo and Krill's putting pressure. The Dynamo's starting to come across. And he solo ults me with all the three of these players diving in together. They catch me. I go down. They take the Guardian. It's easy for me to sort of lament my team for not helping me. Instead, they're just ARAMing over on this side of the map. But at the same point, I've seen that they've taken the Guardian next to me. I've seen that the lane is moderately shoved up. And we didn't have information on where the Dynamo, or the Mo and Krill were. So at this point, I could have definitely been positioned a little bit safer. I knew that I was in a precarious spot in a 1 versus 2. A 1 versus 3, there's not too much I could do about it. Realistically, the only thing I want to be trying to do is telling my team that there's free over here, that they can go and do something else. But I don't get much help. I just overstay and I get punished for it. So let's move on to the advanced stage, and we're actually going to be looking at a random dead dude, or Ard as we're just going to call him. A fantastic player over in OC, top of the leaderboards there, pretty much plays in a lot of the Pacific tournaments too, so this is just a normal matchmaking game for him, and we can go through sort of the checklist of stuff that we're looking for when it comes to improving at the levels. First one, the matchup. Infernus is great as a solo laner, and this matchup against the Pocket is exceptional, right? Pocket naturally has a bit of a vulnerability to spirit damage with the minus 15% spirit resistance that he has off the rip. So Infernus, with his afterburn and the dot damage that he does, is just going to be absolutely feasting here. But he's not looking to get a kill instantly. All 4 levels that we've seen, the main focus, especially with that first wave, is just getting the creeps, trying to get as close to 300 souls as possible, because that's how much you get from the 4 creeps, at least on your lane. If you can get a little bit more by denying your opponent, even better. But just trying to farm up is the main priority. The Pocket tries to harass here a little bit more, and the Infernus is lucky to be alive, gets stuck behind this terrain. But immediately, the Infernus knows the sort of win conditions, right? He has a huge advantage. He knows how he wants to play the lane. He's pushed back, and he goes down to 60 HP here. Luckily, his healing creep comes in order to help. But he's not backing off. He's playing at distance away from where the Pocket is with the shotgun. But all he needs to do is put that dot effect on him, and bam. Gets the first kill, gets a bit of a bonus now because that's a recent change with the patch. But his main focus is just farming up these creeps as much as possible. He's not over-focusing on doing damage to the Guardian when he gets up and pushes to this position. He's just getting the creeps. Now he's got double the souls as the Pocket, but he knows that this is only a tight window to work with before the Pocket's back and fighting in this lane. There could be an argument of getting this pack of creeps over here, but they literally just came online 5 seconds ago, so there wasn't really enough of a window for Ard to be able to do it. But if he gets that kill a little bit earlier, maybe there's a chance that you can take those creeps away from the Pocket, and it means that that deficit is going to climb even more so. Now that the wave is starting to crash over on the Pocket side and the Pocket has to clean this up, it's not worth the Infernus overstaying here. Pocket is still a scary character, so he goes back to get resto bullets, extra regen, and ammo scavenger, giving himself some win condition, right, with ammo scavenger increasing the spirit that you naturally do when you sort of confirm. You get an extra bit of ammo, and you also get some healing items that are going to keep you in a fight against the character that, despite being down in souls, is still scary when it comes to barrage. The fact that this stacks and increases the damage the Pocket can do against you. Ard is well enough attuned to Pocket that he knows not to deal with this. He gets hit by it 3 times, so he's going to play passively. Again, the positioning's good here, but he is managing the creep, just catching as much as he possibly can. When he's got all of the creeps that he can visibly see, he can start denying the Pocket, put him into precarious spots, but also just harassing the Pocket outright because of the damage that you can still do to it. So this is a case of knowing the matchup. You're managing the waves really nicely. We'll see a little bit later into the VOD too that when he wants to keep the lane close to him because the Pocket goes back and farms, he starts freezing it. But for the most time, the Infernus is just going to be chilling. Here, now the Pocket has gone back to farm a creep pack as he's gone to buy. And the Infernus sort of sees, okay, I don't see the Pocket. I'm just going to freeze this lane as much as I possibly can. I want these creeps closer to me. I want the Pocket to be out in a scary spot because I can set him on fire. I can flame dash him to reset that. And all of that with Infuser and Catalyst, you're just going to melt him yet again if the Pocket overextends. So the management of the creeps is good. The positioning's good. The itemization is good. It's definitely a case of Ard could go more into doing more damage to the Pocket, but he already knows that that's not really an issue. The issue is staying alive against the Pocket with his bursting capabilities. And that's kind of what happens again here. The Pocket wants to go aggressively, lands a lot of barrages again, tries to go in and fight 4 barrages, so that's a lot of damage that he could potentially do to Infernus, misses his window, and instantly Ard is there again on the aggression to do as much damage to the Pocket and to shift the wave back into dealing pressure onto him again. So it's a good spot for Ard to be in, and now we start to look a little bit more at the macro side. He's just got his ultimate online, and the Pocket hasn't quite got Affliction ready. So this is a nice play from Ard once he realizes what's going on. He knows where the Pocket is. He knows that they're taking a good amount of damage. There's still a lot of utility on hand from the Pocket. He's trying to put some pressure in whenever he can. But as soon as this opportunity comes up, comes in with the ultimate, sets him on fire, happy to play under the Guardian, goes down to low HP, but he still gets the pick onto the Pocket. Really good macro, knowing that he gets his ultimate online just before the Pocket is able to push up, but I do think there's a little bit of a mistake here. So there's a lot of focus that goes on to mowing down the Guardian. Again, it doesn't really give you all that much at this point. There's still creeps to be farming. In this kind of neutral space, it'd be good if you could potentially grab it. Give you the rest of your team a little bit of an advantage because there's a 1k sort of deficit only. But the Pocket comes back. There's still a lot of creeps that weren't necessarily farmed up on the side. And most importantly, I guess the Guardian is still alive. So Infernus with a 700 soul lead gets pressured in by the Affliction. Forced back. A lot of space and a lot of control taken. And Ard needs to go back and heal. At this point, it's a similar problem over on the side of this Pocket, right? Like, he's not focusing on trying to take a farm. At this point, the tier 2 camp on this side isn't available yet. There's nothing really for him to do, but he's trying to just mow down this Guardian as much as possible before the Infernus is able to come back and contest it. But instead of farming up these creeps, he's trying to take the objective, which he's able to get a little bit of. The Infernus is back. He's full HP. He's set the Pocket alight. Knows that he's going to try and get out. Still want to put pressure there. He's able to go and be aggressive if he wants to because the Guardian's fairly low. So he flame dashes in. Pocket doesn't really have anywhere in a position to go and fight. The Mirage comes across. But Infernus gets the kill. Gets chased down by the Mirage. So Infernus dies, but his teammates do trade the Mirage, so all is well in the end. The Pocket is still kind of here, like farming up and pushing the lane. Tries to put a little bit more pressure over onto the Infernus, but not really too much. But because this lane starts to get so shoved in the Infernus's Ard's direction, ad, macro, positioning, the wave management, even though the Guardian is down, that is still apparent, and it's still technically the lane in phase. So whilst the Pocket goes to start farming, Infernus does the same thing. He farms up the wave that's nearby him, pushes it up slowly and surely, so he's able to farm a camp, and the lane is still relatively close to him. So he farms this up, pushes the lane a little bit more, but doesn't continue to shove. He's not interested in the Guardian. Like I said, it doesn't really give you all that much to begin with, so he goes for the camp nearby to farm this, whilst the creep is sort of meeting towards where the Pocket is. The Mirage tries to contest him. He puts some pressure in this direction because the Ivy's ulting and they want to go for a fight. And immediately the macro call is to try and go for an engagement, get a kill, support the teammates, and then go back to your lane. Go back to the farming. At this point, the Pocket is starting to shove the lane back in the direction of Ard's spawn again. So the Infernus farms up a camp. And lo and behold, the wave is now back towards him. He's not really had to go anywhere, and he's found the two camps nearby. So it's not just about necessarily the laning phase when it comes to the Guardian. It's just about maintaining your lane, farming the camps nearby. And the good thing about a solo lane, especially now that they're all based on the extremities, they're so good to farm from. You're not under any immediate pressure because you're not playing centrally in the middle of the map. And also the timing of taking this Guardian is good. Whilst there's a team fight of 4 people from the opponent's squad over towards green, the Infernus is like, okay, I know that I can take this Guardian quickly, but I can't hang about, right? Because 4 people could easily turn tail and start to fix this lane. So I'm just going to go back and start farming a tier 3 camp. At that point, it's the 10-minute mark. And even though it's both teams trading Guardians, it's a good lead and a good position that the Infernus has set themselves in, all whilst maintaining the lane and even losing the Guardian first. I think he won the lane overall still in comparison to the Pocket. So now we move on to the professional stage. Not only is this Listix Abrams that we're watching, this is also a coordinated like tournament game. This is Buff and Joys, which is Mikhail's team, up against Bottom Barrels, which are a really, really good team in North America. So Abrams, looking at the matchup, what does Listic understand? His character is fantastic in solo lane, but he's up against an Infernus, who we just saw with Ard. We know that Infernus is also a pretty good solo lane character. But I think the main thing to focus on when it comes to like wave management instantly over on the side of Listic is he's not really bothered about fighting the Infernus. All he cares about is farming up his creeps, and now he's going to start harassing Warlex. Because he's got all 4 creeps, he even got a deny in as well, so he has a soul lead. Now he wants to put the pressure in. But his main priority is to farm his own creeps without them being denied, denying any of the opponent's creeps for Warlex if he can, but also then to harass and maybe do some damage to the objectives. You can see that Warlex is trying to parry to try and catch the Abrams whilst he's going for the heavy melee combinations. Because Abrams' gun is pretty tragic early on, so you kind of have to rely on the heavy melee to not only get the picks, but also to confirm the souls too. But you see this like rinse and repeat order of farm up the creeps, take any denies that you can, harass the Infernus. And then eventually we see him go back to the shop, buy an item, and change things up to try and catch Warlex out. The reason why he goes back to the shop now is because the lane is pushed up. Abrams doesn't really want to be fighting here right underneath the Guardian. We saw it from a defensive perspective with both Pavlos and myself. At this point, the Abrams is like, it's too not worth it for me to be fighting, so I'm going to go back to go to the shop. And then when I come back, I've got shoulder charge. Maybe could catch Warlex there with a kill if he was a little bit like quicker on the timing with a melee. Or just Warlex doing well to get out of the situation more likely. But again, wave is pushed up. Infernus has to back out a little bit more. He's going to go to the shop and be back to fight the Infernus before the Infernus is really taking out the lane himself. Like, Listic is just so good at being efficient. That is the name in the game when it comes to the laning phase. Sustaining, being involved, and just constantly able to do something. Warlex does get the combination off here. Warlex even does get the first kill. See that aggression coming in, but the afterburn damage is just a little bit too much. Abrams Listic has gone a little bit aggressive with his buy. And Infernus does go down to 100 HP. Again, focused on farming up the lane uncontested if he can. He's close to his shop, so he's just going to get an item if he can help it. And then trying to shove the lane up a little bit further. But because he's only 300 HP, he knows that an Abrams coming back at this point, even with a soul deficit, is going to be scary. So he doesn't want to fight the lane too much. He's going to look at some of these like statues and boxes to farm some souls. And he's going to remain a presence. He's not interested in going back to the shop, at least just yet. He wants to remain around where the Abrams is. but he's just trying to keep distance because he knows that Abrams is really scary at this point. But Abrams, back to farming up the lane. He could go for this camp. He's shoved it back in the direction of the Infernus. Gonna grab this camp as soon as he can. Because he's just got 500 credits, he's going to buy another item. Again, just constantly in and out, buying stuff as he goes along. Not waiting too long to get some of these items. And now he's only 200 souls behind the Infernus, who tries to go for the parry play again. But it's very much a case of fool me once, fool me twice kind of vibes. Abrams doesn't fall for it this time. And the priority order remains the same. Instead of doing damage to the Guardian, he's farming up the creeps. And then once the creeps are gone, that's when he'll start doing damage to the Guardian, because frankly, there's nothing else to do. He doesn't need to go back. He's sort of away from buying a tier 2 item at this point. So he's just going to do damage to the Guardian. There's not too much else to be doing. These camps up on the left-hand side aren't available just yet. He's already got the camp closest to him. And the Shiv tries to come across to gank and maybe surprise him. Ballistic's in a spot where he can just dash out and he's not really under too much pressure. Can go back and buy an item. But this is where the macro side of the game starts to come in too. The Shiv has swapped over to better deal with the Abrams, and the Infernus is going to go fight in the duo lanes. But now we start to see the rest of the Buff and Joy squad taking some of these lanes and adjusting into what Listic is doing. But now that these Guardians start to come down, the Vindictor's going to try and come in and support. Has the stake available. Now that the team's starting to move across and catch some of these other Guardians, at this point you can still have 2 people in the solo lane, so Listic has a bit more help. But he's not focused on kills. He's not focused on getting the tower. He's just focused on getting the farm up when he can. And maybe going for a play a little later on. But now the Kelvin has come across and there's 3 people over in this yellow lane. The good thing about this is that whilst they're starting to share souls now, they're just focused on getting the objective. The main thing is to just get this Guardian, to group up, focus it down. They're not trying to farm in this position. Listic gets the shove, he gets the farm. Then they focus on the objective. He's going to get this wave yet again. And now there's only 1 Guardian left for the Buff and Joyce team to grab. So everybody groups up together. This lane is shoving over into the Walker, so the Yamato has to go and clear it, potentially. But in this moment, there's a lot of space and tempo that Abrams has created that is going to go help his team push other parts of the map, get a good gank on these 2 players that have pushed up here. And now he's just playing the macro map game. This is coordinated play. It's still the laning phase, but they're so far ahead in objectives and also souls. They can afford to take picks and start playing together around the map. Deathballing, taking more opportunities, snowballing the map in their favor. And you can see that it's not really a long game, 20 minutes in total. But yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this, you found it useful, and thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.